Today's guest, Paul Carpenter, talks a lot about leadership, and all of us lead up, lead across, and lead down. If you're a parent, you lead across to your spouse, you lead down to your kids, or you lead up to your elderly parents. In the workplace, you do the same. So listen in now and catch some practical advice about how you and I can lead up, lead across, and lead down better. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the No Gray Areas podcast. We were just talking before we turned on the mics here. We go back over a decade, right?
At least.
Yeah.
At least.
And we connected because someone I was working with said, you've got to meet this guy. You'll get along really well. And we were just laughing about it because we get together like every 3 or 4 years. Although I got together with you a lot after I went through a pretty tough work experience.
We did have a good season where we were meeting almost weekly.
You were a huge help to me. So big thanks to you on that. That was a tough season for me, and you helped me walk through that. So appreciate that a lot. But we're going to, this podcast is really built around the power of choice and the complexity of human choice. And you're going to unpack, we're going to get to that in a moment. I'm going to back up and talk about something else, but you talk a lot about the difference between confronters and encouragers. Did I use that right? Is that the terminology used?
Yeah. Yep.
And this is why it's well worth everybody staying on and listen, because everybody's listening. They're one of those, right? Naturally.
Yeah, you naturally go one way or the other.
And we probably don't really like the other one very much.
There's no probably to it.
Yeah, okay, we definitely
don't.
So, teaser, hang on, we're going to get to that.
Yep.
But one of the things that you and I talk a number of times about is leading from the second chair, which you're an executive pastor.
Mm-hmm.
You've been executive pastor for a long time, great leader. For people that don't know the church world very well or big church world, an executive pastor, I'm going to say this. This isn't you saying, so you're not going to get in trouble. Okay. I'm saying this. An executive pastor carries a high percentage of the leadership role. Usually the lead pastor doing a lot of the visionary stuff and they're leading kind of an executive team or something, but the executive pastor is doing 70-80% of the leadership at a church. I said that, you didn't.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay.
Yeah. You carry a fair share of the weight of leading a church.
Yep.
For sure.
The execution, making it happen. Like there may be some great plans and we're going to go in this direction, but you're the one that's responsible for making that all happen. So you're dealing with personalities a lot. You're leading up, you're leading across, you're leading down, which is where you and I have talked about this before. So I want to unpack this a little bit. I'm going to ask you in a moment to answer this question. So we all lead up, lead across, and lead down. What's the most difficult for you, and what's the most the one that you're most natural at? Now, let me connect with the audience. Some of them may be going, well, I'm in a leadership position. If you're a child, you lead up and lead across and lead down it sometimes. If you're on a sports team, you lead up, you lead across, you lead down sometimes. So all of us at some points, we're doing that. You're having to lead up, lead across, and lead down. So what would you say?
I'm going to cop out a little bit. I'm going to say it depends.
Okay.
And I'll try to unpack it. But there's times when I think it's natural and easy to lead up. And there's times when it's a real challenge to lead up. There's times that it just makes sense peer to peer, and it's just I'm gonna go do this, and there's no psyching yourself up, writing down your notes for the conversation. You just go do it. And there's times that it's like, oh gosh. And I think when I think about the common denominator is, when you're leading something that for sure is going to have opposition, or it's something they don't want to hear, or those kind of leadership conversations, it doesn't matter what direction you go. That's the most difficult.
When there's something heavy, when there's a lot of conflict, it really doesn't matter if you're going up, across, or down. It's going to be difficult. That's a good point.
So I think each element has its own difficulties, and then each element has its own. This is gives me energy instead of I got to go do this.
So because you answered that well. Let me ask it in maybe a different way. Which one was more natural for you when you began? Because what's interesting for you is you and Cal, who you have to lead up to, you've been working together for a long time now.
28 years.
28 years. So in some ways, that probably makes it a lot easier, and maybe some ways more difficult. But you guys know each other really well.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of trust.
Oh, for sure. I know his heart.
Yep.
I tend to know the way he would think about something. Leading someone who you've been in a game with for a long time, like leading up, with that is really easy. Where I'm guessing, like, if you were the first year in a job and you had to lead up to your boss you didn't know very
trying to figure
well,
it out.
you don't know, are they going to be open to this? Are they not going to be open? Do I come with 25 bullet points that lay this out, or is it just a conversation that we have? So I really, very blessed to have been at Central for 28 years, and just very thankful to spend my career at such a healthy place. I think a majority of that, for sure, I can't remember how many years it wasn't true, but Cal's been my direct report. So, like, I report directly to him I started as a youth intern and he was the youth pastor. And so, like, kind of every step of my journey,
moved up with him. And
yes. I've worked with him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's definitely conversations I don't want to have, but they have to be had.
Which is part of leadership, the tough part of leadership. Yeah, that's interesting because I've asked that question of a lot of people. And you answered a little differently than most. Most will immediately go like, "Oh, this one's hard and this one's easy for me," or "This one comes natural."
That's because they're better leaders than I am.
No,
Pat. I have hard things up, across, and down. The good leaders.
No, I think you make a good point that if it's a really difficult conversation, it doesn't matter what direction. That's going to be difficult, and I hadn't thought about it like that. When people ask me, I would always say, like, it's always come really natural for me to lead across or lead down. Leading up is the one that's difficult. Like, what you said makes sense now that I think about it. Really, if I'm going to have a really hard conversation, I don't care what direction. That's not easy. That's not fun.
Yeah, but I would lean into what you're saying as far as, like, there is a certain amount of ease that comes when positionally you're above somebody, I think.
Yeah.
And you have to have the hard conversation. Like, that's probably, just from a positional standpoint, it's not fun. But it is a little bit easier, because if we were to pull out an org chart, which, by the way, a good leader would never do that with somebody. Hey, look at this before.
Before we have this conversation, let me
remind you, where this is at.
Yeah.
So no, I would lean into what you're saying. I would. I do think there are sometimes positionally it makes it harder or makes it easier.
So what have you learned about having hard conversations? So you bring up a good point. If it's a hard conversation, doesn't matter leading up, leading across, leading down. And again, this goes for our listeners. If you're a parent, you have to have a hard conversation sometimes with the kid. If you're if you're a child, especially an adult child, you may have to have a tough conversation with mom and dad, especially as they start getting older. We were just laughing with our kids the other day. It's like, you guys someday are going to have to be the ones that tell us, like, you shouldn't be driving anymore, Dad. But I told him, you better not tell me that too early. And so let's jump into we've talked about this several times, and I was really excited. You actually you just got done doing your thesis, or you're in the process?
Come on, Pat. I wish I was done.
You're in the process.
I'm not.
Okay.
I've got all my coursework done. I have to write my dissertation.
Yeah.
Working on my doctorate in organizational leadership.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, to be at that point is like saying you're going to run a marathon and you only have 10 miles left.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not like I'm getting ready to trip across the finish line.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I guess I have a lot of hard work to
well,
go.
When we met for lunch, I was like, what are you writing your thesis on? Let's talk about that. But for some reason, almost every time you and I meet, we circle back to this one.
Yeah. What I told you was I want to do my thesis on psychological safety.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do something on this topic. Yeah. And then that's when you started asking me a bunch of questions about this one. And you said, I'd love to talk more about it. So
explain what that is a little bit. So everybody, listeners, me included, we naturally are either a confronter and encourager. So tell us what that looks like and help us understand which one we would be.
Okay. So the way that I stumbled on this was just kind of observing leadership and looking at some things that I struggled with and some things I didn't struggle with and comparing that to others and just trying to be a learner about leadership. And so I've heard leadership parsed a million different ways on different types of leaders. Mm-hmm. And I'd never heard it parsed this way, but it made sense to me in my experience. And I think resonated with you when I started to unpack this with you.
For sure.
So I think leaders fall in one of two camps. You're either an encouraging leader or you're a confrontational leader. The thing I hate about the terms which I would have figured out different terms if this was my actual
because
thesis.
one sounds good and one sounds
the
bad.
encourager sound like, oh, that's the great leader, and the
Yeah.
confrontational, that's not. You know, I don't mean the terms to be in the pejorative either way or in the positive either way.
Yeah.
So the easy way to explain it is I think some leaders very naturally encourage.
Yep.
And I think some leaders very naturally confront.
Yep.
And then the flip side of it would be the leaders who naturally encourage have a harder time confronting, and the leaders who naturally confront have a harder time with encouragement. And so you have these two almost polar opposite leaders. And so the thing that whenever I'm talking to someone about this, that I challenge them is I say, okay, can you think in your life of a leader that's a natural confronter? And everyone's like, yes. And then I say, can you think in your life of someone who's a natural encourager? And they're always like, yes. And so people I think the concept makes sense when you think about leaders you've had in your life. And then maybe when you think about yourself, I think most people right away know which one they are. I think.
I would think so. If you've lived very much life, for sure. I could go back when we talked about this at lunch that time. I could go back to every leader that I've ever worked for, and I could go confronter, encourager, confronter, encourager. I could just go down the list and just boom, boom, boom. Now there were some of them where I'd go like, okay, they were really gifted at doing both, but I could still go, they were naturally inclined to be an encourager, but they learned the skill of confronting. But I could go through every one of them and immediately tell you. And I bet most people can. Is that what you found?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think you can. The point is not to say, hey, these are the best or these are the best.
Yep.
Okay. That's not the point.
Yep.
The point is to, first off, I think if you recognize what you are, like you have to have an understanding of that. And then you have to, appreciate what the strengths and weaknesses are of what the type of leader you are, and make sure that you bring in, maximize your strengths, make your weaknesses so they don't hurt you.
Yep.
So
is there a way that someone can figure out whether they're an encourager or confronter, or have you found most people know? Like you just know?
Well, I think that would have been, when I was playing around with this as my topic for my dissertation, I would have had a way to put that on a scale and figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time it's just intuitive.
Yeah.
People they
so.
understand, like encouragement is a basic enough concept. They understand, does that come easy to me, or is that something I have to really focus on? And, is having a hard conversation something that just naturally happens, or is that something I got to really get myself excited for?
So what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of both?
Let me parse it this way first. Let's compare and contrast the two.
Okay.
That's kind of, I think, helpful for me. So the first thing would be if you were thinking about trust versus mistrust. Okay, so you come to a fork in the road, and you could either say, oh, you know what? I think they were going to do this, or I could think there was no plan at all to do that. Okay, and that happens how many times in a week for a leader? When you see one data point, and you got to make an initial judgment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying, would you err on the side of I'm going to trust?
So if you're an encourager, you more easily trust.
Yeah.
Okay, so you more easily think, I'm going to choose to believe the best in this situation. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're a confronter, you're more likely to think, I'm not sure. I don't think. And it's not like mistrusting, but it's just you're not given the benefit.
These would be the two people that one would say like I'm a glass half full, and the other one say I'm not the pessimist, I'm the realist.
Exactly.
That's what the confronter would say.
Exactly.
I've seen this scenario enough times. I know how it's probably playing out.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of, a confronter is a despicable person that doesn't trust anybody. That's not the thing. They just look at it and they think, you know what, this experience would tell me maybe this and maybe that. So what happens with this for an encourager is the strength. If an encourager is leading you, and whenever they come to a fork in the road, they choose to trust.
Yeah.
Okay, then you feel like you get the benefit of the doubt and you're trusted.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's the weakness of this for an encourager?
Probably trusting too much, like
exactly.
Not recognizing like they really dropped the ball, or they lied to me, or they
you're onto it. So if you always hit that and you always trust, now that's the strength of that is your staff's going to feel like they're trusted.
Yeah.
Okay. The disadvantage to that is sometimes problems will go unchallenged in a timely manner.
And you're probably going to get taken advantage of more often than the other one.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's not all roses,
Yeah.
For this thing, and that's the negative of it. So if you think of a confronter, problems never go unnoticed.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you think about, a little problem gets sniffed out right away, and it doesn't get into a big problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a strength.
Yeah.
That's a strength that happens.
Yeah.
And then the weakness for that is simply, gosh, every time there's something, it's thought.
They're always on my case.
Yep.
It's like everything. Yeah.
So the idea would be a confronter needs to trust more, an encourager needs to inspect more.
So let's say you're parenting and you're naturally an encourager. It means you probably want to inspect and dig into your kid's story a little bit more because you're going to naturally just trust and believe. Or the other one.
This is what when I thought about this, that is so golden of when you wrestle with this concept. Okay, what kind of parent do you need to be? You need to be a parent that encourages, and you need to be a parent that confronts.
Yep.
If you're a parent who only encourages, you're probably going to have an entitled kid who has all kinds of things go unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a parent that all you ever do is confront, you're going to have a kid who doesn't feel trusted and
just feels beat down and discouraged.
Yeah. So you got to do both.
Yep.
There's problems if you just
Such
focus
a good
on
example.
Think about if you're a spouse.
Yeah.
If all you would ever do is encourage your spouse, there's things that need to be confronted that would go without being confronted. It's the same way if you were a spouse that only confronted, the other spouse would feel like, golly, why did we get married?
Yeah. Great example because you're totally right. Like
friend too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course we want friends who are going to encourage us.
Yeah.
But man, I really value my friends who say, hey,
yeah,
I saw this or I heard this and what are you doing? So I think it's not just for leadership. I think this concept, it's a healthy truth to think about, I think, in every area.
Yeah, absolutely. So you gave us then how did you phrase that again? So if you're a confronter, you should trust more.
Confronter needs to trust more.
Okay. Encourager, inspect.
Needs to inspect.
Okay.
So that's the first we think strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is this is so funny. I feel so bad. I can't remember his name, but I just need to tell you this so I don't get credit for it. It's not me. We had a guy come speak to our staff. His name's Ed French. I remember now. So he came and spoke to our staff. He's a member of our church, but he oversaw like a network of like 80 hospitals.
Wow.
So big dog leader.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Huge. And he said, leaders need to give ulcers. Okay. And I heard that, and
that doesn't sound like that's not a typical leadership mantra you hear.
No. Have you ever heard that before?
No.
Me neither.
No.
So I'm sitting there and I hear that leaders need to give ulcers. What the heck? And so I listened to him talk and he explained it, and it actually go figure, a guy that leads a network of 80 hospitals knows what he's talking about. And so the idea was, there's things going on in your organization as a leader that you're worried about and hypothetically are giving you ulcers. And if you're the only one who has the ulcer, you're not leading well. So you have to make sure there's a shared ownership, weight, responsibility with issues.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It didn't at first. Like when you first hear it.
I hate this.
Actually,
I hate the statement, don't you?
Leaders
need to give ulcers.
But a confronter probably would love that right away, right? We're both encouragers naturally, so we're both like, what?
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Here's the strengths and weaknesses when you think about that, giving ulcers. Okay. And again, I think it's obvious we're not talking about physically giving your people ulcers. It's hypothetical. So an encourager, because they may not lean into confrontation, they may get the ulcer. Never give the ulcer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a weakness of being an encourager.
Yep.
There, a strength of being a confronter is you're gonna. It's no problem for you to pass it down.
Yep.
To make it happen. So, thinking about that one. And so I would say the best leaders make sure their people are faithfully handling their responsibilities. I don't want to say the best leaders give their people ulcers.
Yeah.
The best leaders make sure their people are faithfully handling their responsibilities,
Yeah.
which means you can't be the only one who's worried about stuff.
Yep.
You got to pass that down.
Yep.
Do you resonate at all with that personally, with thinking about times being an encourager, that you kept all of the
yeah.
weight for that, and you didn't let other people carry it.
I think the lie that you can tell yourself if you're naturally bent toward encouragement is that you're being a good servant leader by carrying that. Like, I'm going to carry this load for my team. When the reality is like, no, your team should be part of carrying that load. That's why you're called a team.
Totally.
So no, totally. I absolutely resonate with that for sure.
So don't just keep the ulcer to yourself.
Yep.
Share it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
It's a horrible sounding leadership axiom.
It is, but I liked how you changed it though. That they're faithfully
handling their
responsibilities. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another, when you think about strengths and weaknesses, is the inspire versus threaten. And I think encouragers more naturally inspire, confronters more naturally threaten. Okay, you're smiling this.
Well, because again, I'm smiling because I can just tell which one I'm naturally at, because every word that's used for the confronter, I'm like, that sounds terrible. I've had coaches like that, and I just don't like working for ones like that. But this is why this resonated with me, because if you're an encourager, you're probably too far this way and you have to come over that way. And if you're a confronter, you're probably too far. But I know I'm an encourager because these words that you're using, I'm like, I don't want to be that other one. But
which we'll talk about that in a second, because there's an interesting truth to when you look at the other side. So when I think about, like, I feel like you should live the majority of your time as a leader with inspiring your people. I don't think it's healthy to only always inspire and there's never a threat. Okay. So like sometimes someone really needs to hear, hey, if we don't get more revenue, we're going to have to, do a staff reduction. If we don't,
department's not going to stick around.
We're going to have to cut budgets 15%. And again, it's not a threaten for threaten's sake. It's just
you're sharing the ulcer.
Yeah, here it is. Here it is, So definitely, I believe you should live, like the majority of your leadership should be inspiring your people. It should. But there's a time that it's important to bring the other side of it. And if all you would ever be in, and I've had a friend or two who's been in this situation, thankfully I never have, but if your leader lives in the threaten only, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You ever been in that situation?
Yeah, it's really discouraging.
Yeah. I mean, it's worse than discouraging. It's life stealing.
It sucks life out of you. You're
yes.
Right. Absolutely does. It does. But I like how you put that. So probably the healthiest way to lead or parent is you're going to spend most of your time in inspiring, but if that's where you spend all your time, then you're missing. You're not balanced, because there's got to be some threats. There's got to be some sharing the ulcers. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So when I think about like cultural impact, okay, so when you think about an encouraging leader, the cultural impact of that, strengths would be trust, employee morale, inspiration, celebration, fun. Okay, that's strengths. Weaknesses are accountability can be low. Okay, so if you don't ever have the hard conversation, there's zero accountability, which that impacts achievement and excellence. You have to have accountability to get things done. It has to happen. And the weakness of an encourager could be an absence of accountability if you don't have the hard conversations. Another weakness would be unresolved issues can grow. Okay, so like we talked about the confronter, there's never a chance for a problem to get big.
They're going to get them here,
right? Because they're gonna get it. An encourager, if they don't get it here, then it becomes this, and if you don't get it there,
you're dealing with a problem that's this big, but it's because you didn't take care of it back here.
Totally. And I do think complacency could exist. For that. So that's the encouraging culture. The confrontational culture, the strengths are accountability. I mean, the confrontation, it's there's not going to go anything unchecked. It's going to be confronted. Issues are dealt with quickly. People always know where they stand. Like, that's a real strength with the confrontational leader. It's not like you have to wonder what they think.
Yeah.
So
that's told you
that. Yes, it's a blessing. And it often does produce excellence. Now, the weaknesses of a culture with the confrontational culture would be a lack of celebration. Like, you could spend time focusing on the 1% that didn't go well instead of the 99% that did. Fear could be a part of that culture because of the mistrust and confronting things that are small in a strong way.
You avoid walking down that hallway.
There you go.
Because you're like, I might run into him or her.
Yeah.
And I know the conversation's not going to go well, because it never does. That's where it could go.
Totally.
If it's not healthy. Yeah.
Totally. So when I think strengths and weaknesses, I know that was probably more than you wanted, but like
No,
that's
it's
kind of
perfect.
how
Yeah.
the different areas
Yeah.
that
it seems like one of the things that can help with either one of these, as you were describing that, and I look back on my life, like systems. You get a good system in place, and it can help. So, like if you're an encourager, and accountability is something that doesn't come natural for you, but you have a system in place that's forcing everybody to be accountable, that can really help. Probably could do the same. I don't know how a confronter would do that, but there's probably a system that they could put in place that's going to help celebrate or do the things that they're not naturally going to do. Would you agree with that? That systems can help with this?
You have to be intentional.
Yeah.
The point I would make is, you're shortchanging your leadership if you don't bring some of the strengths from the opposite style in.
Yep.
So there's things encouragers need to do that come from the confronter to make their leadership all it could be. And there's things the confronter needs to do that the encourager naturally does to make there. So you have to be intentional. And the thing is, if you're a confronter, you don't have to put on your checklist, make sure I confront what needs to be confronted today. That's just going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're an encourager, you don't have to say, gosh, I need to make sure I
encourage today. Yeah.
So you have to be intentional with what's the opposite.
That's a great point. I like what you're saying, that if whatever you have on your to-do list, if you're an encourager, you probably need to be writing down every once in a while, like something about accountability or dealing with an issue. If you're the other one, you probably need to like literally write down, I need to go encourage, or I need to send a note, or I need to send a quick text thanking them.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Blind spots.
Okay. So blind spots of an encourager and a confronter.
Yep. These are the things that I think. For an encourager, sometimes you don't see or realize the depth of a problem. That could be a blind spot.
Yep.
Like because you want to believe the best, because maybe you didn't inspect what you should have, you're not going to realize how serious something is. Sometimes an encourager won't engage with the proper urgency or strength that they need to with a problem issue. I laugh about this because sometimes an encourager can have a meeting with somebody where they're supposed to like have a hard conversation.
Drop the hammer.
And the person leaves going, you know what? Things are going okay.
Yeah. they were supposed to drop the hammer and they threw a tissue.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Totally. And then in a confronter, I think they don't realize the volume of their voice. So, like the way I'll say that is, so if you're in ministry and you would work for a confronter, sometimes after a confrontation, you'd have to leave that and go, okay, am I single-handedly responsible for the fall of Christianity in North America? Or, did we not stay on top of our deadlines like we should have?
Yeah.
You gotta weigh it.
We ran out of graham crackers in the children's ministry.
Right.
I didn't just dissolve Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah. And because a confronter just feels natural, they don't know how loud the confrontation comes across or the, how it's heard. And so that can be a blind spot. Another one can be, oftentimes if, and again, I'm talking extremes here.
Yeah.
It's not every, cause that's the other part I thought about it is there's for sure weights to this.
Yeah.
So on a scale of a natural encouraging leader, there's leaders who are way over here.
Yeah.
And there's some that are just barely.
Yeah.
Same thing with confronters.
And that's what I think that's why this is such a good thing to capture, because again, whether you're parenting, whether it's in friendships, whether it's in a leadership situation or at work, you may be over here, but what you need to learn is to figure out how to come over here. You're going to be a better leader. You're going to be a better parent if you do that. Or if you're over here, you're going to figure out how to come over here a little bit, right? Which that was the part when we met. That was the part that you're not there yet, but that's the part that stuck out to me the most when you're talking about moving to the.
Okay. Yeah. You're talking about, as
an
encourager,
right?
How you have to. Yeah. So for me, what I have to do for confrontation is, so this is just so specific on, you got to build systems for whichever one you are. So if I come to something and I go, that is a major issue. Okay. So like if I'm looking at that and right away I'm like, that's a major issue, I got to have a conversation in the next 5 minutes with the person. Okay. If I look at something and I say, that's a decent issue, that I need to have that conversation next 24 hours. So like I need to go move up the urgency for what my natural read of an issue is. I have to push it to the right.
Yep.
And if something is like, I don't know if I should say something about that or not, I always say something about it. It's like, I got to move this way. And if I look at something, I go, you know what? I think that's pretty good. I need to question, is it really good?
Yeah.
So if you put it to
move it a click to the right.
Yeah. Absolutely no issue to, I think it's good, to minor issue to major issue. I always, whatever my natural read on it is, I move it to the right and try to have the conversation.
It's almost like if they could picture, there's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. If you fall in number 3 and you're an encourager, move it to a 4, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So then the confronter, it's going the other way.
It is. The only problem with going the other way is there really could be times a confronter sees a number 5.
Okay.
That it shouldn't be moved to a 4. It is a 5. But I think you're natural.
But at least to be aware, to go, yes. I might want to be aware because I might need to confront this, but I might want to
instead of going into it with this is a problem, ask a couple of questions to find out if it is.
Yeah.
That adjustment.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So a team really needs both of these, right? Like sure. You're not a help if you sit around a table and there's 4, 5, 6, 7 of you sitting at a table on a team, and you're all encouragers, you're going to have some issues. Or if you're all confronters, you're going to have some issues. Which goes back to, again, the dynamics of a team or dynamics of a family or dynamics of a marriage, all of our interpersonal things that we deal with. That's where the conflict comes up, right?
Yeah. I would never say the best teams are made up of all encouragers or the best teams are made up of all confronters. I think you need both dynamics. Mm-hmm. And you need to be open to one another, which is
and all those dynamics have to be learning how to get a little better at, because where you have a really healthy team and a healthy culture is when those confronters, those encouragers are figuring out how to go to a click to the right or a click to the left, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Because here's the thing, and we had fun with this at lunch. There's not a natural respect towards each other. So when a natural confronter thinks of a natural encourager.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not, oh, aren't they a great leader?
Yeah.
It can be, I think they're kind of weak.
They're weak.
Yep. And then when you take an encourager looks at a confronter, it's not, oh man, I need to be more like, they're like, that person's kind of a jerk.
Yeah. I was going to use a different word. So that again shows I'm an encourager. I had weak for encourager and then a different word that we won't use for the confronter. But no, again, it just shows that though, right?
So you have a problem. What, do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So you have a problem with whatever camp you land in, you have a natural disdain for the way the other camp does things. So you're hesitant to like utilize any of the tools out of their toolbox.
Or give any ground to them
Right. And so here,
and then you're missing out.
Totally. And then here's the thing. Okay. This is what stinks, encourager. I'm going to tell you what stinks about being an encourager. You know what people do after
Mr.
years?
Encourager, tell me what stinks about being an encourager.
I'm just talking to you. It doesn't stink for me. It just stinks for you. It stinks for both of us.
This is a mirror.
Oh, man. So if you're an encourager, you naturally encourage. Mm-hmm. Guess what weight your encouragement holds over time with those you lead? It gets turned down.
Less and less, because they hear it all the time.
Right. So when I tell somebody, hey, you did a really good job with that, the first year they worked for me, it's like, oh, man.
Yeah.
But when you hear, like, I pretty regularly notice when you do something right and try to affirm you on it, after a while, it doesn't carry the same.
They've been working for 4 years, and you send the text, and they're like, oh, it's Paul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it gets the volume turned down, right? If you're a confronter, if you're naturally a confronter, okay, what happens year one? You lead the way you lead versus year 5 with somebody. They turn it down.
I saw it. There was a coach. There was a coach one time. See how careful I am with that? Every time he walked into the locker room, he'd yell. And, at first it was like he'd get, he's got everybody's attention. But then it was like every halftime. And pretty soon it's just noise. It's just noise. So the volume gets turned down.
The first time that coach ever yelled at somebody, it shook them, right? And gave them adrenaline in their veins.
Yeah.
The 100th time. Yeah. And again, confronter doesn't mean you're a yeller. Yeah. It's just you're saying the same thing. So your strength actually over time becomes not that great of a strength.
Hmm.
I still think it's a strength,
Yeah.
but it's not like it was at first. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so get
I
this.
know where you're going with this. I love it.
When a confronter encourages,
those words mean a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You frame them and put them on the wall.
It's huge. You save the email.
Yeah.
You put the note away in
Yeah.
the desk.
Yeah.
I mean, it carries,
Yeah.
one word of encouragement from a confronter is like 100 words of encouragement from a natural encourager.
Yeah.
And then what happens when a natural encourager confronts somebody?
Yeah. It holds a lot of weight.
Yeah. And so that's what's crazy. It's like there's a disrespect or a, what's the word?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say disrespect. There can be.
There's a lack of appreciation.
Yeah, lack of
It's stronger than that, though.
Yeah.
It's stronger.
Yeah.
Because you look at it and you're like,
yeah, no, I think it's disrespect.
Okay, there's a disrespect, but there's really powerful stuff over there.
Well, and here's why it's disrespect. Because again, when we were at lunch, you had me fill in the blanks. Like if you're a confronter, you think an encourager is, and I use the word, we won't use it now. If you're an encourager, you think that's disrespect. You think a confronter is and I used a different word. They both think that. That's disrespect. But and that's your point, is you're missing out that there's a strength to that other side that you may be missing out on.
100%. And to think that your style is the best style really is prideful.
A little arrogant. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the best leaders know who they are and make sure that they don't miss out on the other side.
Well, it goes back to like the strength finder. I love that one so much. And their little mantra is excel at your strengths and manage your weaknesses. So
Totally.
At this one, if you're naturally an encourager, then encourage really well and excel at that. But manage your weaknesses, and that's what you're giving us, is some practical tools to manage that. If you're a confronter, excel at that. You're going to make sure that little problems don't go into big problems.
Totally.
You're going to make sure that things get done. So excel at that, but then manage your weakness. And you gave us some practical tools on moving that over here a little bit, and make sure you drop some encouraging words now and then, because they're going to hold a ton of weight.
Totally. And the thing I think is the worst mistake you can make as a leader is to try to be somebody else that you're not. Like all too often, if you're a apprentice under somebody or something else, and you think I have to be like them, but it's not who you are. Now take
Imagine
some of the
an
things.
Encourager trying to be a confronter, like someone who's a really extreme encourager, and they're just coming in like
totally
dropping the hammer every day.
Totally.
I think everybody would laugh at them.
Yeah.
And that's your point. Is it's just not going to work.
No. Yeah. You have to be who you are, but try to bring in the other side, or mitigate what could be the weaknesses for who you are.
Yeah.
And don't look past the other things. And the thing that I would say is, I also think, if you're aware of this, you can make ground in it. It's not like this is a, impossible thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I do think I've gotten better at confrontation because I've been intentional with it.
Yeah.
Still not easy. I'll tell you that. I mean, I've thought about this for 20 years maybe, and it's still not easy, but it's always, okay, I got to go have that conversation.
Yep.
And I know
one
I
of
have
the things
to have
you learn as an encourager, I think we all learn this if you've been leading. You learn that this is going to keep me up 3 nights, or it can just keep me up tonight.
Totally.
But if I don't deal with it, I'm not going to sleep for the next 3 nights. So just deal with it sooner than later.
Totally.
Because and you learn you learn it the hard way in some ways.
Totally.
But that's your point, is a confronter rarely has to deal with that thought, because they're like, I don't lose sleep over this because I took care of it as soon as I heard it.
You're springing a leadership axiom that someone shared with me a long time ago. Half of any hard situation is showing up. So if you have to have the conversation, setting the appointment on your calendar and getting yourself in that office or across from that coffee table or on the couch in the living room, just showing up is like, you're 51% done. Yeah. If you just make yourself do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, and then another thing I think about you asked me this earlier, and then I said, hey, hold on, we're not there yet.
Yep.
So for me, for the hard conversation, I make notes, and then I read through the notes and make sure, is this hard enough? Like, am I giving them the full truth? And so I will have bullet points for like the really hard conversation I have to have, because it forces me to say it. the way that I thought and prayed through ahead of time.
Oh, so you have those in front of you and you're reading, because you know if you're going to err on any side, you're going to soften your words, but you'd already
gives
thought
me
and
no
prayed
out.
that this is what needs to be said.
It gives me no
Good
out.
advice. Good
and
advice.
so that's probably been the biggest help I've had, like personally, something that I put in place. The two things are I always move it to the right.
Yeah.
When I am assessing a problem.
Yeah.
And then depending on the severity of it, like the really hard ones, I think through and write down how hard does this need to be said. And then I don't let myself off the hook.
Yeah.
Like it's written there. This is exactly how I want to say it. And then I'll often, when I start the meeting, I'll go, I just want you to know I'm going to be looking at my notes because this means enough to me. I've thought through exactly how I want to tell this to you.
Yeah.
Because I know that can feel inauthentic in a hard meeting if somebody's like.
Then you don't have to make eye contact either. You can read it like no. Which, yeah.
I thought about that, Pat.
That's very, very practical. That's great. That is what I love about this so much. And we'll wrap it up. But this is what I loved about this so much, Paul, is it's very practical advice. The two big takeaways for me are what you just shared. And then the other takeaway is just move it a click to the right or to the left, depending on who you are. You're probably erring too much on this side. It's just move it over, and you're probably going to be a little closer to what actually needs to be done.
Well, and I think losing the disrespect for those different than you,
another huge one.
Is something I think probably everybody wrestles with.
Yep, for sure. Well, Paul, one of the fun things we do on these is two truths and a lie. It's ironic because we call it no gray areas, and I'm going to ask you to lie to me. But see if you can stump the audience.
Okay.
Myself, 2 truths and a lie.
Okay. I was a last-second dive away from being hit by a golf cart driven by Jack Nicklaus at the Phoenix Open.
Ooh, okay.
It's number 1. Number 2 is I ran track in high school. I know my current build doesn't lead you to believe that, but I actually ran the 800.
I was going to try to set you up and say distance or sprints.
Because I know you look at me now and you're thinking shot put, right? Go ahead, Pat. Say.
But you set me up, too. I was going to say sprints or distance. You go right in the middle, the 800. Okay.
So ran track in high school, ran 800. Okay. And I was hit by a javelin.
While you were running?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what's hilarious is I can't remember the third one.
Hey, I got a 50-50 chance. Or are those 2 truths? You don't remember your lie, do you? You don't remember your lie.
What do you think?
Because
let's make this interesting.
Yes,
let's make this interesting.
Truths.
Hold on, give me a second.
I already got
Can
it.
you edit this? Wait, can you edit this to make it smooth? Is that
try it?
If I
she'll try. Otherwise, we're gonna leave this in because it's just funny. Because you just told me your 2 truths.
Hold on.
And then I'm sounding.
Oh, here you go.
Okay.
I remembered it.
Okay.
After looking at my notes. Number 3.
Yeah.
I led worship a cappella for a group of 20 Arizona Diamondbacks in the golf cart garage at the Raven Golf Course.
The running was true.
The javelin?
Yeah, the javelin.
Okay.
Because we had talked before and you said you were a lightweight in high school. So I bet you ran the 800. You're tall. Tall, thin guy would be an 800 runner. The other one has to be true because you gave so many Nicholas driving a golf cart, sprinting out. So those are true. The last one's a lie.
Okay. I did lead worship a cappella for a group of 20 Arizona Diamondbacks.
No.
Okay? Listen to this, man. I am negatively gifted musically.
No, we're going to sing right now. You and I are going to sing right now.
No.
Yeah, we are.
No.
What do you want to sing?
You didn't tell me that.
Amazing Grace. Let's go.
No. I will listen to you and I will hum along off key. Okay? So, no, listen, whatever the normal person is musically, I'm so far this way. I mean, I can't clap in rhythm. I'm horrendous. Okay? So, actually, you may know him. Do you know Brian Hummel?
No.
Okay, so he's the chaplain for the D-backs.
Okay.
He and I were roommates.
Did he set you up?
He asked me, hey, we had someone cancel. You want to come play golf with this group of Diamondbacks baseball players? And this was...
That's an easy answer.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I was like, yeah, of course.
And then the real small print.
And so we showed up, and it was a frost delay. Okay, so we had to wait. And we were sitting down. He goes, well, let's do a quick devotion thing down in the garage. So we go down and we're sitting in a circle, okay? And I tell you, my worst nightmare would be what you're trying to get me to do, to sing in any way, especially if it's captured forever.
We'll edit it out, Paul.
I'm horrible. Yeah. I know you well enough to know. So anyway, so we're sitting there, and he goes, "Hey, before I take a look at this this psalm I want to. Hey, Paul, would you lead us in a song?"
Okay, was he messing with you, or did he like?
I'm like, I look at him and I go, good one, you know. And he goes, "No, I'm serious. Lead us in a song." I'm like, "Brian, I'm not like a musical guy at all." And he's like, "No, seriously."
Do you remember what song?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, what song?
I can't believe you're asking me. Why? This is a point of trauma, and you want me to think
I do.
through?
I'm going to dig this up.
So, I did Create Me a Clean Heart.
Okay.
In front of 20 Diamondback players with no one else joining me. It was a solo. And can you imagine the acoustics of an underground golf cart?
Yeah. It was catching every cracked voice and
it was literally like,
I
mean, I'm starting to shake.
Yeah.
Like just thinking of it. Okay, so that's a true story. The Nicholas thing, totally true. I was coming up a cart path at the Phoenix Open, and it was like lined with people, you know, but I was walking in a cart path, and he was driving way too fast. I'm telling you right now, Jack Nicklaus is a reckless
crazy driver.
He came around the corner, and I was like, I saw it was Jack Nicklaus, and then I was like, I'm about ready to get hit, and I dove and like barely missed me. And so I was like, I think I would be a rich person if I would let him hit me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Wow. So the lie is, I did run track in high school.
You did not get hit by javelin.
I got hit by a discus.
Oh, yeah, nice. Really, though? That had to hurt.
Dude, you don't even know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know.
It's a metal disc.
Yeah. And they,
Okay.
Well, so javelin.
You can edit this, right? You don't have to do the whole thing. Okay.
Sure.
So what happened is, you know how it's a V, right? And you have your concrete thing you spin here, and then they have a backstop.
Yep.
Okay, so what we do is we'd all line up next to the backstop, like in order when it was your turn to throw. So I was like right outside the edge of the fence in line, and I was holding the discus against my chest like this, waiting for my turn. And I was talking to a guy, and that's the last thing I remember. And what happened was the guy slipped on his third turn, and it came out of the back of his hand. It hit the disc that was against my chest. And I know that because I had an imprint of my disc.
Wow.
And then it hit me up here.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. And then I woke up like on the way to the hospital.
Yeah.
And like, that's the story.
Well, Paul, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Very practical advice for us. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Incredible interview with Paul Carpenter today. And the question we want to leave you with is, are you an encourager or are you a confronter? And how can you manage your weaknesses and excel at your strengths? So we'd love to hear from you. Comment below, or you can email us at info@nograyAreas.com. And remember, like, follow, subscribe, No Gray Areas.